I've observed a lot of polarity, a lot of different sides, a lot of different perspectives. I have continuously dived deeper into the mysteries of nature, which are not really mysteries, they're kind of like these patterns which our brains can recognize, and then we can put it into our, not our, but a perspective, which can then be translated into a language which we can communicate with each other. Um, have been really just tuned deeper into like my own senses and how I feel about this reality which I've created, and I I channeled a lot of information so far on this journey. And I don't know what is a way that I can share this, because most of these channeled things are not even patterns which can be put into words. It's a mix of chaos, and it's a mix of chaos and fractals and lots of randomness, if that makes sense. I mean, chaos is randomness, but chaos can also be structured, it can also be scripted, it can also be expected, it can also be very just different in every single sense depending on the perspective. And then there are limitations to a lot of the things which we do to communicate with each other. And I've just realized that this whole lifetime is not just to raise my awareness, to expand um, my sensory receptivity. It's not just to expand my mind and expand my knowledge. It's to also learn how to communicate that in a way that bypasses those limitations, that goes beyond those limitations. Because I've been struggling for a while with um, identifying and expressing my emotions properly. And when I do it like successfully through shadow work, it just translates to me just crying and being in agony the whole time. Like, I just completely feel like the world is just such a gloomy place, and it's so tiring, it's so exhausting, like. And then I just go to sleep. Yeah, I just go to sleep, and then I wake up and I feel transmuted and energized and whatnot. Language plays such an important role in shadow work, is what I've also realized in that case. Because language is a medium that you utilize for expressing something which is unseen most of the time, physically speaking. For example, emotions. For example, thoughts. For example, ideas. For example, visions, imagination. You know, all these cognitive um, abilities that we have that are mainly unseen in the physical realm. Because let's be honest, I cannot just look at someone and then like fucking see a bubble of text on top of their head telling me what they're thinking, that's not something which really happens, because thoughts are not physical. They're not made of atoms. They're produced, they're built upon by the use and the utilization of energies. And these things, these energies turn into energetic patterns. And it's really quite something, like, because these thoughts, these emotions, whatever I imagine, whatever, like, all of my cognitive functions basically arise from my brain, which is the organ which kind of controls most of my physical body, which is seen by this realm, seen by the realm and the people of this realm. And yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say. Yeah, even the feeling of forgetfulness, it's unseen until you express it using language. And I'm not talking about anything that's non-scientific here. As you can see, it's just psychology. And in psychology, they say that the mind and the brain are two separate entities, but they're interdependent on each other. To like they're kind of intertwined, like infinity is, with two loops and an intersection. It's kind of like that. And yeah, not just my brain, but like my mind also, which is the unseen part of me. It's also something which can only be seen and heard and expressed once I express it using language. And who interprets that language? My mind does. My brain does. My whole being, my whole body, my physical body senses these energies. It's receptive to these sensations, and I receive these signals. And then I translate it within my brain. And then I communicate that within myself, within my subconscious. And then I formulate a response, a responsive action. And everything that I do is an action. There is nothing static about any response, even something that's passive. Even me just being in stillness, even me just meditating. There's a lot happening when you're just meditating, when you're just being still, when you're just laying down and you're just looking at your ceiling and wondering about all kinds of things. There's much more happening than you even realize. And most of that information is something which you can only be receptive towards when you tune into the frequency of that information, which is what I basically call channeling. And that's what I've been doing. I've been channeling this knowledge within myself because of so many signals that I have been endlessly receiving from this reality through my physical senses, through my being. Because a lot of information is contained in just a small and a tiny, like, thing. Like, suppose the petal of a flower. It's a tiny petal, but it has so much information contained inside it. Quantumly speaking, it's a lot that's happening within this petal. And now I'm looking at this petal, and I'm touching this petal, and I'm smelling this petal. It smells really nice. Even that sense of smell is an information for me. And yeah, hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, I've just realized how important language is when it comes to expressing what I'm expressing right now because I feel if we all start to speak a language that we all understand, it'll be much easier for all of us to just become more aware and just expand our minds beyond our current beliefs, which we argue so much about, unfortunately. And we can finally bypass the limitations once we are able to just see the unseen without having to, you know, interpret it so much, without having to put so much logic into it. When you're only supposed to be like receiving the signal and feeling the signal and then responding to that signal, you know? And I know this world is already shifting, even though I cannot see it. But sometimes it just makes me go insane. It makes me feel like I'm the only one, you know? Which is a trap in a way because I've realized that when I was feeling this way, and I've also observed this in many people, that when you feel like you're the only one who, like, knows what's going on, like, in this world, where you feel like you're all alone by yourself with this information and knowledge, it really feels isolating. It feels like you're the only one, and feels like, you know, your only decision at that moment should be to isolate yourself even more, which is a very tempting decision to make. Because in that moment, it just feels like your choices are very limited. You cannot just go to anyone and then start spreading this knowledge because they might start to think that you're crazy. Or you might want to put all of this knowledge into something, like channeling all of this information into something like art, or you know, something like you work upon. It feels really difficult to do any of that because you're already like so overwhelmed with like this feeling of being drowned and flooded by this overwhelming amount of information. And yeah, I mean, isolation is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing sometimes because I realized that when I was in isolation for a long time, I was able to work a lot on my energies and do a lot of energy work and, you know, expand and go beyond my limitations and break a lot of patterns and loops and transmute them into something that actually serves me instead of something which, you know, tries to sabotage me. All that stuff, because when you're like in the presence of other people, it's harder to do that because you're interacting with a lot of energies. You're interacting with their personality, you're interacting with their emotions, their thoughts, their feelings, their everything. So it's harder for you to like just work on yourself. You will just end up working on both yourself and that other person because that energetic exchange that happens when you're like in the presence of someone else, it's really subtle, but it happens. And when it happens, you feel it. You will feel it. You will just feel like, yeah, someone is here. So, I mean, that's the reason why most people don't cry. Like, okay, most people don't like fully like express themselves when they're with other people because, you know, you really want to vibe with that person. You don't want to like go against that flow and then start like bombarding the whole room with your energy. So yeah, I guess isolation really works for that. You get to bombard the entire space with your energy and you get to work on every single thing and figure things out. So I'm not saying, like, the point of me saying all of this is not that isolation is bad, isolation is good, but what the trap which I'm talking about is that when people become isolated and they see the benefits of being isolated, they they suddenly like get really static in that field. And I'll explain why, because and that's why I say communication is a huge key. Like, just not just communicating with yourself, but also communicating with someone that you trust. It's really important, because when you don't do that, and you just keep talking to yourself like the whole time, um too much of anything is never good, and being isolated for too long also has its own consequences. And the main consequence is that you literally like create this feedback loop, this negative feedback loop within yourself that, oh, why should I go out there and express myself? Why? I'm so better here when I'm isolated, you know? It's too risky to put my feelings out there. It's too risky to meet another person on the same level. You know, stuff, excuses like that keep like coming in the door and like just tempting you to stay in that isolation mode for a little longer, you know? And that can be a sabotaging kind of a thing, because you don't know what kind of experiences are waiting for you out there. You don't know what kind of people you could meet out there, you know? But, yeah, most people kind of just declare to themselves that they would never meet someone that is actually willing to understand them. And that is their biggest misunderstanding about life itself, about this reality itself, about this world itself, about themselves too. Which is funny, because most people don't see that they're wrong about that. Especially when they're in that feeling and in that emotion where they just feel so rejected, where they just feel so lonely. You know? It really starts to consume you at that point, because you've already kind of declared it to yourself that you can never meet someone who actually gets you. So that's just you limiting yourself, you know? That's just you telling yourself that something is impossible, and that what you deserve is to just stay alone. And that's your fate, or something like that. But you see, that's a negative feedback loop, because the more you start to like have this nudge to like actually go out there and express yourself, the more you keep holding yourself back. So one day, if you get like an opportunity knocking at your door saying, hey, you can come and express yourself here, you're free to do whatever the fuck you want, you know? You can express yourself, you can open up to us, we completely understand. We're ready to accept you for who you truly are. Now, what do you think that person would do? They'll just stay isolated. They'll be like, no, fuck off. I'm not coming. Like, I'm not getting out of this place. Because I know it's risky, and I know I'm doing the right thing by protecting myself. And that's the whole loop. And that can be the trap, which keeps people from actually achieving their fullest potential. Because if you really think about it, if we were really like satisfied, like as like as the physical beings of this planet, if we were really satisfied with being alone, if we were really that like, you know, if we were really surviving alone, then we wouldn't really be social creatures. We wouldn't even need to talk. In fact, I don't think the population would be like as much as it is right now on this planet. I don't think there would be like 8 billion people on this planet if being alone for the rest of your life, or holding yourself back from opening up for the rest of your life, was the solution to survive the rest of your life. Like, that wouldn't really like even be the case at all, you know? And you have to understand this. People like way back then, in the past, People used to have tribes, people used to have communities where they used to get along and eat together and live like a family, live in a village. And that's what kept them together. That's what kept them alive. That's what kept them like going in life. And I feel that is what's missing. Like people just isolate themselves because that trap is in fact very tempting. Even though like a bit of isolation can do a lot of good than bad. So yeah, that's my whole point. If we speak a language, if we express ourselves in a language where we see the unseen, awakening can happen at a much faster rate than how it is happening today. And I don't know what this language is exactly, but once I figure it out, I'm gonna share it with the rest of the world and we'll see where it goes from there. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.